Welcome to the Bariatric program at Community and Monmouth Bariatric Centers of Robert Wood Johnson. This video describes the content of all 5 consistency stages occurring after bariatric surgery, including clear liquids, full liquids, purees, soft, and regular. The next month is critical for proper healing of the stomach. It is thus important to follow each stage properly and wait the right amount of time to move up to the next stage. The closer you follow the rules in the book, the less pain and discomfort you will experience and the more weight you will lose. This process moves very quickly, and after a month, you will be eating regular food with some exceptions. We'll begin with a quick recap of the fluid intake in the hospital. As mentioned in the previous video, you will be receiving a stack of 1 fluid ounce cups and instructed to consume 1 of these every 15 minutes. It is recommended that you alternate water with something that is on your tray. So ultimately, if you will be consuming 1 ounce every 15 minutes, that is 4 ounces of liquids per hour or half a cup. This is very important to keep the GI system awake and functioning. Dehydration is something that is going to be very, very important to avoid. After surgery, dehydration is one of the biggest risks for you and occurs when you lose more fluid than you take in. If the body does not have enough fluids, it cannot carry out its normal functions, and it is the top reason why people get rehospitalized after they go home post-surgery. It may start with lightheadedness and dizziness and things like dark colored urine, and then eventually end in extreme thirst, confusion, fatigue, and vomiting, at which point you do have to go to the hospital. That's why it will be important to constantly be sipping fluids as you go through the stage advancement process. It will also be extremely important to take small sips on a frequent basis as opposed to large gulps on an infrequent basis. The only way to meet your hydration needs will be to increase frequency because you will not be able to take large gulps of anything that you are drinking. The clear liquid stage begins 1 day before surgery, lasts the 2 or 3 days that you are in the hospital, and continues for another 3 or 4 days when you get home. As previously mentioned, clear liquids includes anything that the light can shine through. Now that you've already had your surgery, red and purple colors are allowed. So the content is essentially the same items you've been consuming over the last couple of days, which includes sugar-free electrolyte drinks, possibly ice pop, sugar-free jello, and a broth like chicken, beef, vegetable, decaf coffee or tea, again, no creamer. You can sprinkle unflavored protein powder into any of the aforementioned liquids. However, you won't be needing a whole lot. Sprinkle just enough to not alter the taste or the texture of the clear liquid that you are drinking. Stage 2, full liquids, begin on post-op day 6. This stage lasts for 9 days. The premise of full liquids is now the liquids are a little bit thicker and they are definitely not see-through. This is the stage when you can reintroduce protein shakes. In addition to protein shakes, you have a lot of other options to mix things up and give yourself a little bit of variety. Some of these items involve yogurt smoothies or essentially drinkable yogurt. Also, another great option is cream or vegetable soups, which are strained. You can also purchase soups of the brand that you see a image of. This brand does not need to be strained, and the soups are absolutely delicious. Some fantastic flavors is butternut squash, tomato, mushroom. Speaking of tomato, you can have tomato juice, tomato soup from Campbell's or whatnot. You can also have regular or Greek yogurt. Greek yogurt can be a little bit thick. If you feel that it's a little too thick for you, you can always dilute it with milk or a drinkable yogurt. The key with yogurt, though, is no fruit pieces. Sugar-free pudding is also allowed for stage 2, as it does tend to be thin enough to not create any problems. Milk or any kind of non-dairy milks like soy, almond, oat, cashew are also fine to drink. If you are doing non-dairy milk, I do recommend sprinkling protein powder in them because they are naturally pretty low on protein. So below you see pictures of a few drinkable yogurts, a few protein shakes. Now, the key with stage 2 is to portion whatever you are having to 3 fluid ounces every 2 hours while sipping water in between. This is the schedule that you also have in your book. As indicated, it shows every 2 hours, gives you 3 fluid ounces of one of the examples that you have to pick from, and indicates that it should take you maybe 15-20 minutes to consume these 3 ounces. After you're finished with your 3 fluid ounces, for the next, roughly 2 hours, you are consistently sipping on water for hydration. Frequent sips is the only way that you will actually be able to meet your fluid intake needs. I indicated to take a sip every 5 to 10 minutes. If this is not natural for you, which usually it's not, I highly recommend to set an alarm for at least a part of the day and see if that increases your fluid intake. Another very important rule to follow is to not nurse a protein shake for multiple hours until it is finished. So you don't want to just open a shake and finish the whole thing in an hour, even if you're sipping slowly, because this will ultimately end up being too many calories and then also get in the way of your water intake. Stage 3 begins exactly 2 weeks after your surgery, post-op day 15. This is a stage that a lot of people are looking forward to because essentially you are now allowed to eat from pretty much every food group. There are a lot of foods that are by default pureed, which means they do not need to be put in a blender or altered in texture in any way. So we will go over those. So some of the most popular items that people love to start out with is scrambled eggs and regular or Greek yogurt, as well as other dairy products like cottage cheese or ricotta. Next, we have hot cereals like cream of wheat, farina, grits, cream of rice, or runny oatmeal. You may see there is a purple asterisk next to it. Everything that has a purple asterisk essentially indicates that these foods are essentially devoid of protein. However, they have other excellent qualities, so you definitely should eat them. However, they lend themselves very well to sprinkling in some flavorless protein powder. Again, we're talking 1 teaspoon, maybe 2. Again, make sure it doesn't affect the taste or the texture of the food, makes you want to still eat it. Toddler food pouches are fantastic. They are actually flavorful. They're not baby food. They actually are more like different flavors of applesauce. Also a great place to put a little bit of protein powder in. You can also puree your own fruit. You can mash a banana. You can puree some canned peaches. You can also just have regular applesauce. Vegetables that also puree very nicely include carrots, cauliflower, peas, and sweet potatoes. Next, we have refried beans, which do not actually have to be pureed. But you can also do beans and lentils, which do have to be pureed. You can do hummus. You'd have to just eat it with a spoon, but again, it's just another option. Tofu also works really well. Low sugar pudding, if you hadn't already started consuming it on stage 2, you can definitely start for stage 3. Don't forget to add flavorless protein powder. Now, if you like fish, you're in luck because if you bake fish, you actually do not have to puree it. You just have to slightly mash it with a fork because fish is soft enough that it does not have to be put into a blender. However, Poultry, such as chicken, turkey, seafood, pork, beef, all of those do have to be pureed and possibly diluted with broth, as well as canned tuna or chicken. Those also have to be pureed. Just being canned is not soft enough. People who do not puree them usually regret that decision. The biggest difference between stage 2 and 3 is that now you have to start separating your food from your liquids. Luckily, the schedule also changes to accommodate this, and your meals are now 3 hours apart instead of 2 hours. This will give you a good 2-hour window to hydrate. So a serving size for one meal is roughly 3 fluid ounces, or maybe possibly even less depending on what you are eating. If it's some kind of meat, chicken, it may actually only be 2 ounces. So one meal should take no longer than 30 minutes. You do not want to be trying to finish something for over an hour. Whatever you can eat in 30 minutes, that is your meal. Then you wait another 30 minutes, and then you start sipping water at the previous rate of every 5 to 10 minutes. Then you have to budget another 30 minutes before your next meal. This takes a little bit of getting used to, a couple of days, but people tend to find their rhythm relatively quickly. This schedule becomes a lot more manageable because instead of having 7 or 8 meals a day, you are now having 5 meals a day. Typically, people feel a lot more comfortable going to work when they are on purees because they only have to do about 2, maybe 3 meals during their workday. Stage 4. This diet begins on day 22 after surgery, also lasts a week. Now, soft foods essentially also involves all of the food groups, but now the food does not have to be put into a blender and can appear as itself. The key here, though, is to cook your food to become very soft to a point where it can potentially be mashed with a fork. So here are some examples. Eggs cooked any style are usually really easy-going. You're still doing Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, ricotta cheese. You can actually do regular cheeses, shredded cheese, but I always recommend not to get what I call cheese happy and start sprinkling it everywhere because it is relatively high in calories. Now, meats, you want to cook in some sort of liquid. The best ideas are cooking it within a soup or a stew. Soups in general are a very good carrier of both protein and vegetables. So, for example, making a chicken noodle soup without the noodles, only to have chicken and vegetables, is a fantastic food to have for stage 4. This is also a stage where, if you already haven't, you want to start incorporating cooked vegetables. This will be very important for bowel movements, better nutrition, and continuing your weight loss. My recommendation is to start with the world of frozen vegetables. They are just as healthy as fresh vegetables, unlike canned, which are not as healthy. And essentially, with frozen vegetables, you virtually cannot undercook them. So it's a great place to start introducing a whole variety of vegetables. You could get stir-fry mixes, all sorts of varieties. So basically, any vegetable that comes in a frozen mix is fantastic. You can also have some avocado, soft fruits like bananas, canned fruits are also good, but do rinse off the canned fruits even if they're just in natural juices. So your schedule is the same as it was with purees. Every 3 hours you have a meal that lasts no more than 30 minutes. Your portions do start to vary a little bit. They can be as low as 2 fluid ounces or a quarter cup, and they can be as high as 4 fluid ounces, half a cup. It all depends on how heavy the food is. If there's some kind of meat involved, the portion will likely be smaller. If there is vegetables or dairy involved, the portion will likely be on the higher end. Stage 5, regular food, the final stage. This diet begins about 4 weeks or 29 days after surgery and continues for the foreseeable future. Essentially, stage 5 becomes more a list of what you cannot have versus what you can. But the biggest difference is that you are now able to introduce fresh fruits and raw vegetables. You're still consuming lean protein from poultry, fish, eggs, beans. You are also allowed to have certain whole grains. We'll get into that more in the next slide. The list of foods to avoid involves the following: greasy red meats. Dry chicken breast will unfortunately cause problems, so the best way to eat chicken is cook it in liquids and go for dark meat like legs and thighs. Beef jerky is also probably too tough of a meat. Fried high-fat foods will also not be tolerated. Carbonated beverages will cause pain. Sugary drinks and high-calorie or sugary desserts will likely lead to dumping syndrome, not to mention have no nutritional value. Doughy breads are a big one to avoid. They will all likely cause a lot of abdominal pain and discomfort. So doughy breads can involve things like bagels, breadsticks, rolls, hoagies, buns, croissants, pancakes, and waffles. So anything with basically white flour. If you do want to eat bread, the best choice is whole wheat slice of bread, specifically toasted. It will digest with a lot less pain. Pastas are also going to be a bad idea. Long pasta is the worst. Spaghetti, fettuccine, linguine, even little pasta, you may eventually be okay with those, but in the beginning you might as well avoid them. White rice also is not allowed. Brown rice tends to be more or less okay. And dried fruit both is tough and has too much sugar. These are foods that you will pretty much have to avoid, indefinitely. Now, temporary foods to avoid, we're talking 3 to 4 months after surgery, involves sharp objects like popcorn, peanuts, almonds, coconut flakes. These all can get, caught in the stomach, cause irritation. Also, when it comes to raw vegetables, you want to avoid raw celery, raw broccoli, raw asparagus, and pomegranate seeds. However, the rest of the raw vegetables are okay. Cucumbers and apples need to be peeled, and absolutely all cooked vegetables are also allowed. Now, common nutrition-related discomforts typically involve consuming some of the items mentioned in the previous slide that need to be avoided. Gas pains, they typically are a few days after surgery. The best way to get rid of that is to walk around. Nausea may happen in the beginning if you are not hydrating well. Also comes from, again, eating too much of the wrong thing. Constipation is to be expected in the first few weeks when you are only consuming proteins. So that's why I always encourage to start the vegetables as soon as you are allowed, which is essentially stage 3 pureed. And you can have certain laxatives like milk and magnesia or Miralax, but no harsh stimulant laxatives. And of course, also increase your fluid intake. Dumping syndrome is something I mentioned also in a previous slide, which occurs when you consume ultra-processed carbohydrates or simple sugars and large portions. So this is when the food moves very quickly from your stomach to your intestines, and besides diarrhea, it comes with a lot of other unpleasant symptoms like dizziness, lightheadedness, nausea, vomiting, abdominal cramps, rapid heart rate. Basically, it's a whole body experience that you want to avoid. So for long-term success with the regular stage, overall, some key points is introduce one new food at a time to see how it is tolerated before mixing it with other foods into salads and things like this. Wean off protein shakes and liquid calories as soon as possible, preferably stage 3 or 4. Again, high in protein, but also incorporate vegetables. Chew thoroughly and eat slowly. Separate eating and drinking by 30 minutes before and after meals. Continue portion control. Stick to the portions indicated in the book, even if you feel that you can consume more. Most people end up finding themselves most comfortable at about 4 meals a day, with 4 hours in between. But for some people, they go back to 3 meals a day. Some people go up to 5 small meals a day. The key is not to skip meals now that your portions are very small. The size of your meals will no longer hold you over for very long stretches of time. We're talking 6, 7, 8 hours like they might have before surgery. So for further questions, please contact your respective registered dietitian, Victoria at Community and Sam at Monmouth. And also make sure you stick to your post-op nutrition appointments, specifically in the first couple of months. That is when things move the fastest, and we are here to help as best as we can. Thank you so much.